This episode of the Wrong Advice podcast is powered by Harlow, the only woman-owned lighting brand for photographers, videographers, filmmakers, and content creators. Designed for those who push creative boundaries, Harlow lights are compact, powerful, and built to inspire. Harlow creates tools that stand the test of time, crafted for those who see light as an art form. Harlow believes that your light can be bold, powerful, and beautiful, and that it deserves to be seen. Visit Harlow online at www.harlow.com or follow them on Instagram at Harlow Creators. Welcome back to the Wrong Advice podcast. I'm your host, John Pacino, and I'm very excited to have the one and only Romy Rainer in studio with us today. Romy, how are you?
I'm good. It's a Monday morning. We're sitting here together, and I'm happy to be here.
Me as well. Can you give a quick introduction to the listeners to who you are?
Of course. So my name is Romy. I'm a 30-year-old photographer from Austria, and I came to New York City, I believe 7 years ago. It's been a journey, but I'm loving it, and I'm trying to have fun every day.
How's that going?
It's been challenging over the last couple of months because I made the big decision to branch out on my own.
Love that.
Yeah, which in this environment currently is a little bit tough. I shifted from the creative part of the industry to business, and I've never had to market myself or kind of like sell myself in that way. So it's been a learning curve. Every day it's been like reaching out, doing, talking to clients, trying to get jobs, and it's been fun but challenging.
Yeah, an adventure. It's like anything.
Exactly.
You're kind of almost starting over, right?
Exactly. And that's been just hard because I had such a prestige job with an amazing studio, and we were on the top of the game. And I had to kind of not restart from like the bottom because, I have the knowledge of what I've gained with the studio, but I had to kind of find myself again as an artist and what I stand for. And that is, a challenge in itself.
Can you talk about like your beginnings in photography? Because I know obviously you started way before 7 years ago when you came to the States. So talk to me a little bit about the process at the beginning of, your career and the start to like falling in love with photography in general.
Of course. So I grew up in this small little town called Corinth in Austria. It's like defined by its rhythm and nature. The summers are filled with people being on the lake, swimming, and the winters are spent in the hockey rink. Everybody sends their kids to the rink playing hockey. And, I had a very strong foundation with my family. I mean, they've always been there for me. They always encouraged me to dream big and follow my passions. And so I basically started out as an athlete. I grew up with a lot of discipline, trying to really make a standing in the hockey world, which I did. I played for a national team. We won the silver medal at the World Championships.
Sick.
Yeah, I had a really crazy childhood and teenage years. Not the stereotypical of like going out partying every weekend. It was more of like waking up at 6 a.m., going to games, practice. So that was a really different kind of setup, and it taught me a lot about just commitment and discipline and the courage to just go for what you want. But I was always very artistic in some kind of way. My dad always had a camera with him. We were always very passionate about music and art, but I never really realized that until I had to stop playing hockey due to the fact that it wasn't really funded back then. So making a career out of that was unfortunately not possible. So I kind of had to redirect my path, and I went to this wedding, friend's wedding, and there was a photographer from Australia, and he basically was, not tired, but he was like, you know what, you should take the camera. It was like 9 p.m. He was like, go and have fun. And I took my dad out on the porch, and we have this incredibly strong connection, and I took a picture of him, and in that moment, everything changed, because I felt like I was back on the ice. And it was just me and him and the camera. And I get goosebumps.
I love that.
And that's when I knew I wanted to pursue this career.
How old were you when that was?
I think I was around like 20.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because I moved from my hometown to Australia, to Paris, to Vienna. Kind of like figure out what I wanted to do. My parents always encouraged me to try things. And they were always like, if Australia resonates with you, go there, try your thing. But it happened back home. You know, I got back home from all these travels and I went to this wedding and I was like, damn, okay, this is something I'm also really passionate about. And I always knew it just because my mom sent me a letter a year ago and she was like, you have to have a look at this. And I opened my phone. I was like, what is this? So in elementary school, they asked me what I wanted to do for a living. And I wrote down photographer.
Wild.
And it was so buried in my mind because I was so focused on being an athlete. But when I saw this, I was like, oh, all right. So it all comes full circle and here I am.
So I had a very similar experience. My parents sold their house 2020 or 2021, I can't remember, after I lost my job and I got a really generous severance package. And I was like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? Like, I can't, like, work in corporate America anymore. This is just not going to be it for me. And I bought a camera and went on a road trip. And then, you know, I was like, okay, like, I could try to figure this out. And, like, I spent the entirety of 2020 slowly going broke and 2021 going slower into being broke. And then when they sold their house, they found, like, this box of, like, the 3x5 prints that you would get when you would hand in a disposable camera. And I was like, damn, I was like, why did I not, like, think about this being something that I loved at a younger age? And I always think it's funny when, like, something full circle like that happens in someone's life. Like, you know, so much, I played sports too, so it's like so much of my time was diversified beyond, like, hobbies, right? So it was mostly like athletics and school, and then it's like very, you know, kind of almost serendipitous that later on in life, like, I just came back to something that I didn't even remember that I loved.
Yeah.
And I think that's so funny because, like, I think without a similar foundation of, like, my family and, like, their support and their belief that whatever I want to accomplish, I can, like, I never would be sitting here right now. Like, it was crucial in my development as, like, a person and a creative, I think.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, when that kind of, you know, goosebump moment hit, like, what was the feeling like for you in terms of, like, planning out the next phase? Because you're 20, you're young, so it's like, how do you go about tackling this thing that you're like, okay, I clearly love this?
I mean, it's trying to find programs, you know, where I could study the art of photography and try to get into it. And I was lucky because I found a university in Vienna, not far from my hometown, like 3-hour car ride. And so I moved out there, applied. They only took 20 people out of, like, you know, thousands.
Wow.
And I got lucky that I got in. I applied twice. I made it in the first time, but I didn't go because I was starting on studying economics and law, which was not for me.
I majored in economics too.
And then the second time around, I was like, please, I hope they're not, you know, pissed at me for not doing it the first time. But they welcomed me with open arms, and I studied, and I loved it, you know, because it was artsy. You know, we had studio time. We were able to go out and shoot and do projects, but it was also business oriented. So it gave you kind of like a structure of how to create your business, what to do if you want to sell your prints, like stuff like this that really helped build a foundation. And then I had to do an internship for 2 months. It was required through the school, and I didn't want to do it in Austria. I was like, I want to try something else. And I was lucky because we knew a very special woman also from my hometown called Romy, who lives in New York City, and she does interior photography. So she photographs apartments. And my parents were like, you know what, we're going to call her up and maybe you can go and spend some time with her. And I took the plane to New York City, and I stepped outside of the airport, and I felt like home, right? So that was my beginning in New York. And then I went back home, finished my degree, and then it kind of evolved from there.
What was the sort of mindset once you graduated and you have, like, this opportunity to kind of decide where you're going to practice your craft? Or, like, I would imagine it's a daunting kind of feeling to, you know, leave a family that you're very grounded with and very safe and comfortable with. And, like, what was that sort of decision making like when you're like, okay, I'm going to go to New York to kind of pursue this career?
You know, because I used to be an athlete and it's like all or nothing, I was always like, if I want to become one of the best, I have to work for one of the best. So I sat down on my computer, similar to my dad when he was younger. He just did it on his typewriter, writing out applications to go overseas or, you know, go to somewhere else. I sat down in my childhood bedroom and I wrote an email to the 10 best photographers, I believe back then, in the world. And I was like, I want to intern. please take me, and a lot of people in my circle were like, I don't know, like you should maybe try to find somebody local and, stay here and do your thing. And I was like, no, I think I'm going to try this, because like my parents always encouraged me to just try things out, because the worst thing that could happen is no, right?
Yeah.
And you move on.
Totally agree.
And so I did that, and luckily Mark Seliger's team got back to me, and they were like, whenever you come to New York City, just come by. And little did they know that I took the next plane to New York City, and I knocked on their door, and I was like, so here I am, and I want to do this, and they took me in. I interned for a year. It was an incredible year full of learning a lot of different things, and eventually I became Mark's first ever female first assistant for 5 years. It was a journey. It was filled with lots of hard work, early mornings, travel, commitment, passion, and it was a real learning curve for me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that's fucking awesome, because it's like, that is like almost the hubris of youth, to be able to be like, I'm going to just email the 10 best photographers and like whoever, that's fucking awesome. I love that. But also like it is like, I think, because I feel a similar way in terms of like taking risks and chances. It's like, I don't know if it's an athletic mentality or it's like the grounding that I had from family, but it's like, as I've gotten older, the way I measure successes and failures have changed tremendously. So it's like, to me, it's like, I'm going to take an opportunity and try, because like you said, who cares if someone says no? It's like, what's meant for me is going to find me. Like, fuck it, who cares? But it's like, to be at 23, I don't know that I would have had that mindset. At 33, I had it, because I was like, fuck it, who cares?
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? And you get told no.
I mean, I think for me, and I'm incredibly lucky saying that, my family has always kept every door open. And the reason why I believe I was so confident with 21 is that I knew I always had them in the back, right? So even if things wouldn't work out in New York City, I always knew I could come home. Yeah. And that really gave me the confidence to just do that. It didn't paralyze me, it made me stronger. Oh, yeah. And I think having a foundation like that makes a huge difference.
In terms of like knowledge, obviously working for one of the top photographers in, I guess, the world, for sure the United States, the tutelage that you gain from like that firsthand experience is probably in a lot of ways priceless. How do you take an opportunity like that, spend 5 years in like the top of the top, and then think, okay, now it's time for me to go do this on my own? Like, how big of a risk did that feel like for you?
It was an uncomfortable decision at first. But it kind of started building up as the time like was building, right? Because you start there, you learn, you grow together. There's a lot of things you don't know, and you evolve. And then after a certain amount of time, you feel like you're getting ready to make that step. But ultimately, it took Mark and I both to be like, you got to do this, and I trust you, and you can. And I don't want to keep you here because now is the time. So I was at the point where I was like, I should do it, but am I going to do it? And he was like, you have to. Right?
I love that.
So he was like, it's now or never. We did everything we could together. We learned from each other. And if you want to make the next step, now is the time to do so.
I really respect that from him. I think that takes a lot of like faith, because like in a lot of ways he's losing a very crucial piece of his operation, which is like difficult, because like replacing you is probably hard. Well, not probably hard, it's hard. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that. I like that. I think that support is pretty great. I've always found like in this career there's like such a non-linear path to like your goals and your dreams, and like building out a career is like, every imaginable scenario. Now that you're like firmly cemented in this, like you're your own boss, you're like doing your own thing. How do you go about planning out like what the next 5 years of your career looks like?
There's no plan. I have absolutely no plan. I'm just hoping for the best. No, I am, I'm trying to, luckily because of my background, I have a lot of contacts, which is a huge advantage to people starting out with basically nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So what I did, I used all the contacts that I had. I wrote a letter once I start working for the studio to each and every person that I've ever worked with. And I was like, listen, I had a wonderful 5 years. It was a journey. We did it together, but now I'm doing my own thing, and I hope that you're still supportive of me and what I'm trying to accomplish. And I had a lot of support from a lot of people that were like, oh my God, yeah, cool. So now we get to do this together in a whole different other capacity. And it's constant outrage. It's a constant hustle every single day, and it's just finding inspiration. As I said, it was difficult for me after 5 years of giving my all to a place, especially creatively and mentally, to know who I am as an artist, right? I'm still rediscovering who I am, right? And what I want to do with my passion and with photography. So it's that journey that never stops, I believe, You always evolve, you always learn, and you discover along the way.
I was talking with Mark Mann on the podcast about how difficult I found it to find like my creative voice and style. Talk to me a little bit about your process, because like obviously I agree it's an ever evolving sort of living, breathing organism, like figuring out like who I am and like what I'm trying to create. How do you go about defining your style and like your creative voice?
I think, we are constantly reminded of so many things because we have this little device with us every single day, and we're overfloated with like images, and it's kind of tough to really figure out what you resonate with.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do, I put everything aside and I just sit with myself. I love to just sit. I love talking to myself. Don't get me wrong. It just
out loud or in your head?
loud, and more importantly in the shower. And that's where my ideas come. I don't know.
I resonate with that.
I don't know why, but there's something about water and me, having the time to myself. And then obviously also influences from books and records. I love just looking at album covers and record covers from the past. My dad has this huge collection. It's also like, I think when I stopped working for the studio, I had a period of time where, as I said, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And family friends reached out to me about a project they were doing in Vienna, and they asked me to come on board. And first I was like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And then I was like committed to it. And then I sat down, I was like, okay, now I have to figure out what I want to do with the project. And it kind of forced me to step out and just start working. Mm-hmm. I think that was very important because I was very hesitant because I'm such a perfectionist. So it always takes time for me to start. But once I do it, I'm in it. And you can't stop me. To get there is a huge process for me. And that really forced me to like having to do something. And this project turned out to be incredible. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But to get there was a challenge.
What was the challenging part about it? Because like I procrastinate a lot. So is it just like general procrastination, or is it like imposter syndrome? Like what was the impediment?
I think it's the perfectionism and the pressure that came with the job I had before, because I feel like people have certain expectations when you come from an environment like this. Even as a kid, people have always told me, you're going to do big things, you're going to be in the spotlight, you're going to do this and that. And, at first it was flattering because I was like, okay, cool, people believe in me. But then it started to become a lot of pressure. And especially after I stopped working for a studio, I was like, okay, now I got to really prove myself. Mm-hmm. So this first project was a really important one for me because it was the first time I got to represent myself. Ooh. And that being said, I was afraid of that, right? And so by family friends reaching out to me, being like, we have this gallery show that we're doing in Vienna. It's going to be shown all over the city. And they wanted me on board. I was like, okay, this is it, and I'm going to make the most out of it. And I did, which is good.
Well, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. See, like, I find that, like, granted, I'm 10 years older than you. I just turned 40. So I don't have, like, that self-doubt anymore because, like, I feel like I supremely know myself. So I think it's more about, for me, it's, like, balancing, like, my own artistic desires with, like, client work. Mm. And it's, like, how do I sort of balance, like, the stuff that they want me to do and the things that I want to do? And I'm curious, like, as when you're starting off on your own, like, do you have that struggle, or are you much more grounded in the fact that, like, they're hiring me for me and, like, I'm going to do me, and then hopefully they're happy with like what I'm giving them.
I'm currently in the process of trying to figure that out. New York City is an incredibly expensive city, right?
Yeah.
We all got to make rent. We all got to create a living. So I took a couple of jobs where I was basically, just making money, which obviously sucks, but it is part of the game. And the project I did in Vienna, where I really was able to show my artistic voice, was a passion project, and I absolutely loved it. And there's other jobs I need to do just to make rent, and I'm hoping that at some point in my career it kind of blends together. But at the moment I'm at the beginning of building my own brand, so it just is what it is, and it's still photography, right? I still love what I do. It's not necessarily what I love to shoot, but I'm still having fun with it.
That's good. I struggled with that a lot, like about a year ago, because I felt very drained by taking the jobs that were strictly to pay rent, and like it felt like I was like, listen, I know every day is a gift that I get to have a camera in my hand, and I should be very, very mindful of that because it's like a gift. But at the same time, I was like, okay, I'm not going to shoot a birthday party. Yeah. I'm like, I would rather not take my camera out. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like I struggled with that a lot because it was like, when you're relying upon one thing, I didn't have the diversification of income that I do now, that like I do a million things. So it's like now, like, almost 5 years into this, I'm like very grounded in that. So it like gives me the peace to know that like I don't have to do the things that I don't want to do, which is a real benefit for me because like I'm a typical fire Sagittarius, like fucking loser. But like so I think I struggle with that a lot because I for a while I was like every job I have to take, even if I don't, it's not important to me, and like I just need to make as much money as I can doing this because this is it. And then I realized that like very early on that you can be both artistically inspired and take jobs that fulfill that, or work with the clients that want to hire you for you, which is what I think navigating now. Because like I feel like I've got to a place where I'm getting booked for what I make and not like just to like snap a button. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think this is a very good thing to do, and like I'm a very goal-oriented person. And whenever I'm doing something that I necessarily don't feel inspired by, I know in the back of my mind, this is all for the greater good, right? And it's going to get me where I want to be. But if this is what it takes, so be it. It was the same thing with hockey, right? Training for the big game or the big tournament, you got to put in the hours to get there. And, sometimes I still assist with photographers or digitech. And for me, those kind of jobs are like there to kind of get to know people in the industry. I feel like so much is about networking.
Oh yeah.
And I'm terrible at networking.
Really?
I'd rather, or I think I am, but I'd rather be in front of, like, be with my camera and just shoot than go out to a party and do small talk.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm
not that kind of person.
Yeah.
I'd rather show them what I can do with my craft.
Yeah.
Than talk about it.
Yeah. I hate talking about myself. I picked a great platform to not do that. But like, I don't want to be in a social setting. And like, I always think that's a little bit the difference between like New York and LA. Like in LA, it's very much you have to like talk about yourself and like what you do. And like, I don't feel that pressure in New York. And like, I don't want to be somewhere having to pitch myself to strangers. Like, just let me be me and be a human, not like, oh, I'm the photographer. I don't introduce myself as a photographer anymore. I don't think like being like, hey, I'm John, I'm a photographer is like really relevant to like the fact that like I'm just a person. Yeah. I'm curious, like having come from like the top of the top from like an assisting perspective and like being the first assistant to like a wildly successful photographer. What kind of pressure does that put on you as now being the person in charge?
You kind of represent, a little bit of that environment and where you come from. So it's always going to be a part of you. And again, I'm wildly grateful because I've learned things that not a lot of people have access to from a master of its craft. So I take this very seriously. I took my job very seriously as a first assistant. I represented a studio. I represented a legacy. So that will always be a part of me. And it's just, I feel like you kind of learn the ins and outs of the industry and how to do things in a very professional way. And so, always be the first assistant to Mark in some way, and I love that because again, like it was such a
part of your
great
bio.
part, of my life. But it kind of all involves, right? You involve as a person, and I'm just trying to carry on the professionalism that I've gained from it, and just to make clients happy, right? Because what I've experienced with the studio was like people come to us with a dream, with a vision, and with budgets. Obviously, you got to make those work, but you're gonna have to create this magical place for them for a couple of hours where they think everything is possible, and that's a big responsibility, right? So in a lot of ways, art or photography, especially for clients, is kind of like an escape from the corporate settings or from the structure, and you get to create like a little bit of like a paradise for a couple of hours where they're like, wow, okay, this is our product, and now we see it in front of a camera, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, I fucking love that. I think that's awesome. I'm curious, you mentioned goal setting, like something that was a big part of like your youth and like growing up. As you step out into your own, like how do you go about setting like goals for yourself? And are they financial? Are they creative? Are they award based? Like what are like how do you go about setting them for yourself?
I think there's two parts to my goal setting process. First of all, I've not really had the chance to spend a lot of time with my family over the last couple of years just because I was so committed to my role. So my goal is to incorporate my family a little bit more into my world currently. We're a little far apart, from each other. They're overseas. So I'm really trying to spend a lot of more quality time with the people that I love and care, which is a big goal of mine because, people get older, time is ticking. So I think that's a big goal of mine, just to be able to share precious moments with them. And then career-wise, I just want to build a portfolio that I am happy with, right? It's so tough to build a portfolio or a work that you are satisfied with, because sometimes I feel like you look at your work and you're like, oh, that's amazing, and then you go back 2 weeks later and you're like, oh my god, I hate it, right? Like it's a thing, Yeah. So I'm just trying to be satisfied and happy with what I do, and obviously try to make a living with it is a big goal of mine. But there's so many factors to life and what we define as happiness. So I just want to spend time with the people that I love and get to do what I love in terms of photography, and not have to worry about anything financially where I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Romy, you said something that resonated me with a lot with regards to time and like, kind of this like mindset of like, it's always fleeting. And like, I talk about how a lot on this podcast, like could 25-year-old John have learned like 35-year-old John's lessons? And a lot of times I'm like, no, it takes the time. Obviously you brought a clock with you. I would love for you to expand upon, cause like I found it as like a very, I don't know how to articulate this in like in the proper way, but like, I sent out a questionnaire before the podcast, and like I think you took a lot of care and time to respond to the questions. That it's not necessarily an exception to like the podcast and the pre questions that I ask, but the clock specifically and your relationship with time like really resonated with me deeply, and I would love for you to kind of talk about it.
So you sent me this wonderful questionnaire, and there was this question about me as a teenager, who I was, or how I acted as a teenager. And the first thing I did, I picked up my phone. I was like, Mom, like, I don't know, like, tell me, like, who was I as a teenager? And she just started laughing because she was like, Romy, if there's one thing about you as a teenager that I would tell the world, it's this little thing here. It's the clock that I have. It was given to me by my grandfather, who I have a very strong connection with. And he gave me this, and I made this thing my entire world. Like, I didn't even need it to wake up or give me the time necessarily, but it represented something so much more than that. It gave me stability and structure. Mm-hmm. Like, I woke up with this little thing. I went to the kitchen, sat down, having breakfast. I like turn it around. I knew exactly like, okay, I have like 5 minutes to have breakfast, and in 20 minutes I have to get up and, do this and X, Y, and Z. But, at the end of the day, I think there was it's more than just giving me time. It gave me a sense of stability, and it was from somebody that I deeply care about. So it was just representative in terms of the discipline I had and how I structured my day, you know? So yeah, it's a very special clock, and I still have it with me. And
See, I think that's really special. I had like a very toxic relationship with like time, I think.
Okay.
Mostly like because I'm not a morning person. It's like for a lot of like my youth, like I was just like very not present in the moment in life, and like I was just kind of coasting. And like as you get older, you like my sole regret is that like I didn't care enough as a youth, and like I don't think that that's like an abnormal kind of mindset, right?
Yeah.
Like I was a kid, like you
Yeah.
know, your brain doesn't form till it's 25. I give that person a pass, right? But like my personal relationship was not as healthy with it as it is now, and it's like now I'm like very very mindful about the time that I get to spend doing whatever it is because like God forbid, you know, I could die tomorrow, like get hit by a bus, like whatever. Like the time is not guaranteed. So it's like the relationship that I have with it has gotten much more positive because I'm greatly appreciative of the time that I have, especially with like my family and the people in my life. So it's like when you make intentional decisions about what to do with your life and spend that time, I think it's very crucially important to have that kind of healthy relationship. You've had it your whole life. So how does that positively impacted like you and your career and kind of everything that you're trying to build right now?
You know, sometimes it's difficult because I'm so structured. Like I plan out my entire day. It's kind of, my mom always calls it a little spooky. Like yeah, like I know like 5 minutes for this task, then I gotta move in 10 minutes for this task. But in a professional world, that's everything.
Yeah.
Because like showing up on time, or I even show up like 10 minutes early, you know, that just shows the kind of respect you have for the tasks that you do or the people that you meet up with, and has really helped me because that kind of showed the people that I work with how committed I am to certain things, you know. And again, it just helped me, you know, kind of like in a professional world, and then structuring my day as I go and allowing time, as you said, for family or for different tasks that are important to you. So it was never really hindering to me or like pressuring. It was more of like a comfort thing for me, you know, to know that I have time for certain things, and it eased me rather than it stressed me.
Oh, that's so nice. I wish I had that.
It's a good thing. Again, like my mom would say, like if she was always afraid if this clock would ever lose its battery or it wouldn't work because it just grounded me, right?
I'm curious if there's anything else similar to that clock that grounds you in your life.
Definitely family. I speak to my parents almost every day. Even if they're far away, my dad knows exactly when to call me in the mornings. You know, I feel like just being close to them and knowing that I've always have a place to return to, I think that really, really grounds me, knowing that no matter what I do, especially with the path that I'm on right now, being on my own, and then just my partner in general. Like, I feel like I have such a strong foundation of people in my life, and people who knew me before all of this craziness, right? So I think that's a really important thing. And then obviously hockey and the sport that I did. Those are all components that make me who I am, and that deeply like relax me. You know, when I was stressed working at the studio and we had big projects and it was just like overwhelmed, what I would do is just grab my skates, have all my gear in New York City, and go skating. And just,
Awesome.
you know,
Clear your mind.
kind of clear my mind and just be myself.
I've often said that like I'm extremely lucky for the family that I have. It sounds like you are as well. That's a dynamic that you don't get to choose, right? Like I'm very blessed to have the support system that I have. I think it's foundational in its ability to ground me and give me that safety net of like, okay, even if I fail, like I've got backup plans. I've got people who care about me who can like, you know, have my back. Talk to me about the support of your family when you're taking this big leap to go out on your own and how it impacts your relationship with like success and failure and your fears surrounding being, you know, Romy the artist versus Romy the first assistant.
You know, like again, when I started out, they never gave me big advice, right? They never told me what to do or who to be. They always let me figure that out. They always led by example. You know, they always tried to live a very honest, loving, and caring life, and they were hoping for me to do the same thing. So I was never really given big advice of what to do or what not to do. And I was always encouraged just to try things out. And it's the same thing now. Like, there's no fear of failing, right? Or there's no fear of them giving me the wrong advice, because that's never the case. So yeah, I'm just just trying to be myself, to have fun along the way, to learn from mistakes. I feel like what is a mistake? Like, I feel like making mistakes.
Leaving your lens cap on.
Absolutely, and I've done this a million times. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, definitely a big mistake. But I feel like there's no such thing as a mistake, because like, out of every failure you learn, right? Ooh. You grow bigger, and you kind of like start to pivot in ways that you probably wouldn't have if you didn't make that mistake.
Oh, I love that.
So especially because I did what I did when I was young, and I've learned to just overcome challenges. And I had to, especially in the studio environment that I was in, because if you work with high profile people and demanding shoots and projects, then no is not an option. Right?
Yeah.
It always has to be yes. It always has to get done a certain way. So what I've learned is just to pivot and try different things, and to not give up, and to make the impossible possible.
Oh, I love that. You said something earlier before we started recording that resonated with me a lot, and it might have been in your questionnaire as well. Talking about giving yourself space and like peace to like kind of like relax or like grow within yourself. I'm curious about like when you started giving yourself that latitude as a person, because I feel like I was very hard on myself in my youth, and then like as I've gotten older and through my 30s, I really found myself as a person. So I'm curious like how that sort of evolved for you, and like what that moment was like where you were like, okay, I can give myself the peace and the space to grow and thrive.
I think I'm still learning. I think I'm having a really hard time with that, because I'm such a perfectionist, and I always want things to go a certain way, even with the people around me. So it really throws me off if something doesn't go the way I'm trying to go in. So what I've realized living in New York City is the harder you're on yourself, the more difficult it gets in an already difficult environment. Ooh. And so I started therapy, to be honest with you.
Love it.
And
Love it.
I was talking to my therapist about, my day-to-day life and who I am as a person. And the most important message that I've gained out of this was like, be kind to yourself. Let yourself loose. Like, let it go. It's all going to work out. But if you stress, everybody gets stressed, and then it's going to be a lot harder.
Oh, totally agree.
Oh,
I totally agree. I relate to that because like I think therapy was very crucial to my development as a human being. And like I tell everybody that I talk to like in life, like, go to therapy. It's like it's an unbiased like voice of reason, and to like bounce your feelings against, like, not that like our families are going to give us bad advice, but at some point you need to have somebody who's not like actually tied to you relationally to like give you totally unbiased advice. And I think it was very transformative in like my maturity and of like as a human being, that I think I couldn't recommend more.
Yeah.
This podcast brought to you by BetterHelp.com.
Actually, that's where I did therapy.
So did I. That's what I said. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, seriously, it was the best. And I genuinely think that it changed. I think so much of like our lives are just tied and tethered to a phone, and like what our expectations are of our lives versus all the people in it. And it's very easy to get lost in who you are.
Yeah.
And I think going to therapy was very grounding for me, because it made me realize that like everything I'm going through is very normal. Like these self-doubts, this imposter syndrome, this depression, this anxiety, like whatever it is like foundational to the human experience. So it wasn't something that like I was like fell out of like the bounds. It's like, this is very normal to feel this way. And I think having been told that by someone who's not just has to tell you that it like changed a lot for me.
It's important, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody needs to kind of, as you said, hear it from somebody else that's not like super close to you and gives you a certain perspective. And it helped me discover a lot of things that I forgotten or that I pushed back in my mind that I didn't know that existed. And it's a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
Going through therapy and talking about your past and your triggers and certain ways of how you do things. It's a lot of work, but it really helps try to figure out who you are. And it kind of helps you navigate through those challenges,
I think two things have been transformational for me as a person. Obviously, my support system, my family, and therapy. And they both instilled a confidence in myself and, like, a belief that I can do whatever I want. And, like, it's not going to happen overnight. Like, I'm not going to become a huge podcast tomorrow, and I'm not going to shoot the cover of Vogue tomorrow.
You never know.
Yeah, I know. Tuesday's already booked for me.
Okay, cool.
But my point ultimately is that, like, these things are possible because, like, I give myself the space and the belief that, like, I can manifest whatever the fuck I want in this world, and I can achieve goals that I could have only dreamt of 5 years ago, right? When I was in a completely different space in my life. So it's like I now have the confidence and the belief in myself, and whether that came from my childhood with my family or whether it came from therapy or whether it just came from the fact that I'm 40 fucking years old now, it's a little bit of all of that. Yeah. But, like, I have a belief that I can structure my life in a way that is supremely happy and, like, comfortable and safe. And, like, I don't know if I felt that way 6 years ago. Granted, we were in a pandemic, but, like, yeah, it was a little different. I'm curious, like, as you endeavor into this, like, solo kind of act of your career, have you had, like, a pinch me moment yet where you've been on set and you're on and you're like, holy shit, like, I'm really doing this?
I had one moment. It's a very funny story. My mom loves to tell it too. I used to be a massive Katy Perry fan. We're talking, like, big. My entire room was, like, pink, like, posters everywhere, like crazy. I loved everything about Katy Perry. The songs, like, again, crazy. And my parents gifted me concert tickets to her show in Munich. And I prepped for, like, an entire month. I created this, like, pink little shoebox with photos of us and, like, letters and little goodies. And I recorded a CD. I can't sing. Like, okay. Seriously, right? But I was so confident that she's going to hear this and she's going to love it. And so I went to the concert with my parents, and I walked up to this security guard, and I was like, hey, whenever you have time, can you just give this box to her? And he looked at me, and he was like, absolutely not. I was devastated. I was like, what do you mean? I worked on this for an entire month. Like, this is my idol. Like, can you just, like, pass it along? And in that moment, my mom looks at me, and she goes, like, Romy, don't worry. You're going to meet her one day, and you're going to give her that box. She looked me dead in the eye. She's like, this is going to happen. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I was quiet for the rest of the night about it. And 2 years ago, we got the opportunity through the studio to shoot the poster of American Idol, and she was a judge on it. And I saw the name. I was like, ooh, that's cool, right? I'm not a huge fan anymore, but it was something special to me, and I was like, oh, cool, I'll get to spend a day with Katy Perry. And we walked on set. I was very professional. I've always been that way with high-profile people because, to me, it was never about them per se. It was about the day and how to make Mark's life easier. Mm-hmm. So it was never the focus for me to be like, oh, I'm on set with X, Y, and Z, and we're doing the Oscars. It was special. And I will always cherish these moments. But for me, it was more of like, I need to focus on making the camera work, the lighting, and everything. And
it's a job, yeah.
It was my job. So we spent the whole day on set. You would not know that I've ever cared about this person. But one of the clients knew that I used to be a fan when I was a kid. And so when the shoot was over, he kind of pulled her aside and he was like, can you maybe take a picture with Romy? And I was like, oh my God, I was like, oh, this is happening. And so we took this picture, she walked away, and I just started bawling. Oh. And it was not, and I get goosebumps, it was not because, I paid $1,000 to be backstage and we get to spend a couple moments together. Don't get me wrong, that there's nothing wrong with that. Sure. But it was more of like my inner child was so rewarded because I worked so hard to spend a day together working. And for me, that was so insanely rewarding. Mm-hmm. And to me, that success was not like it was an alignment, right? It was not axis, it was alignment. And so, yeah, that was just such a magical moment.
I really love that. Also, I love the alignment comment. Because I always feel like when you start living your life, like in like what your aligned purpose is or like whatever, like everything starts kind of working out.
Yeah.
And I didn't really believe in that hoo-ha, like manifest alignment bullshit, but like it's not bullshit. Like I genuinely believe it. I was like, if you put yourself in the position that you're supposed to be in, everything starts kind of working out.
Yeah.
And like even the most daunting, crazy, impossible things like start coming true. And I love that you just brought that up. It's like one of those things where it's like, you know, could 10-year-old of Romy have ever imagined like working with Katy Perry, let alone like, you know.
It was fun, you know. My mom sent me pictures of the box. She was, did you show it to her? And I'm like, absolutely not, Mom. I did not show her the box.
I don't need a restraining order. Like,
you know, like she would freak out.
Yeah.
And my dad, who is a DJ, he DJs.
Oh wow.
He found this recording on his MacBook one day, and he decided to put some of the samples into one of his songs. So I hope the world never gets
inserting into the.
It's horrible. It's like, you know, but it was a kid.
Yeah,
you know,
that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait, how cool is your dad that he's like DJs?
Yeah, he makes music. He, you know, that's one of his passions. And we strongly connect on that too. During COVID, we started DJing together.
Oh my god, that's awesome.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know, we just connect in so many ways, and that's another outlet that I grew up with. Like, there was always vinyls playing in the background, and the house was always filled with rhythm and soul, and it just kind of shaped me, you know?
I love that. Like, as I've gotten older, I've gotten much more into vinyl, and like it's like it really. I think it's one of the reasons why like music is becoming a bigger impact in my life, because if you consume it with intention, it feels much more substantive. Whereas like, you know, if you're on your phone, you're on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, it's like just randomly shuffling.
Yeah.
But like the act of consciously deciding what I'm going to listen to and play, like when I'm cooking or cleaning or whatever, has been such a treat as I've gotten older. Like, I mean, my dad had records growing up, and like I never really listened to them. And I had an iPod, so it's like, what did I need a record for? But now as I've gotten older, it's like all those older tactile things have like been much more important to me, I think, in being very intentional with the way I consume things. Talk to me about being intentional in your art, like creating with intent and like building out personal projects and other things like that. Like, talk to me like how that kind of resonates with you.
It all started when I met Mika Brzezinski through Mark. We met her, and we got the opportunity to shoot with her in Maine at her house. And I met her, and in my opinion, we started just clicking. And she represented something to me that was so much bigger than just, you know, photography or the news or whatever. She became a mentor of mine. And I think she was the first person that really saw me or saw something in me as a photographer and hired me for a big job in Abu Dhabi to accompany her at the Forbes Summit. And when I went to Abu Dhabi and I witnessed the power of women coming together and just connecting, for me, that got the ball rolling. And that's when, you know, when I started shifting in that kind of like niche of, as a female photographer, trying to embrace that and uplift other women in a sense. So that was a big shift for me. And I did it with the last project that I was trying to do with the in Vienna, where I went out on the streets of New York City and I shot strangers. I stopped them on the street like Richard Avedon did with his white background. And I took portraits of them and I asked them 3 questions.
Well, I love that.
It was a great project because I got to know so many incredible people. You would not know, like the stories they had and just the smiles on their face, like getting randomly stopped by a stranger and, you know, and just connecting with somebody.
Yeah.
And what I've realized is that men were so much more willing to do that.
Oh.
Women were so hesitant.
Oh, wow. Especially with a female photographer. Like, yeah, wow.
Even that, like they were, just because, you know, in that moment you might not be ready.
Yeah.
Or you might want to go somewhere, or you know.
Yeah.
It's just like, it was so much harder for them just to be present and just to reveal yourself. Because the project was called What If Vulnerability Was Strength? And the guys were just like, you know, chit-chatting and like, yeah, let's take my picture and whatnot. But women had a really hard time.
Wow.
And so for me, that was really eye-opening. And I wrote this whole essay on MSNBC. Credits to obviously Mika for letting me do that. But yeah, I think it kind of shifted in that way where I'm just trying to pay the path for women in this industry. You know, I feel like since I was one of the only first ever female assistants, it's definitely a male-based industry. And one of my biggest aspirations is just to try to change that a little bit, you know?
Do you feel a draw to like put on for like the next generation of young female photographers, like to bring them along as well?
Hopefully,
Yeah.
you know, I feel like you don't see it as much, as, especially in the, you know, top league. I mean, obviously Annie is there, and you know, but it's rare. Also on sets, like you rarely see any gaffers or grips or female. You know, it's a rare thing, and I feel like that should change, because why not? Why can't you do that? Why can't you wear the hat and make the calls? I'm trying to kind of like change that narrative.
I love that. You know, it's a gatekeeping kind of mentality. It's like a very old school mentality, but like I think as the world changes, like that should hopefully be changing with it. And like there's obviously great desire for there to be change in this space. I mean, you go from everything from representation on like the models ends to like a similarly like with the photographers and the creatives. So like there's hope that these things are changing. I'm pessimistic, but like that's just my nature. But like it's I'm hopeful, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to be a part of the change. So like
Yeah.
if you want to see the change in the world, like you have to be part of that change. And I think we live in the most chaotic, insane, fucking world on earth, and it gets harder every day. So it's like if you want to see change, you have to be about it. And
Yeah.
I foster that deeply because like I just am inherently not happy with like the state of the world, especially in this country. And like as an expat, not an expat, but like as a foreign-born person who lives here now, like I'm sure you can totally relate to that. It's just like we can be doing better, and I think that's pretty great. I'm very curious when you're talking about being on set and like working in these like upper echelon kind of things. How do you handle the pressure and the environment in these situations when you may be dealing with your own sense of self-doubt or imposter syndrome, or like how do those things kind of impact your time on set?
Not to sound crazy, but I've always been really confident.
Oh, I love
Again,
that.
I feel like that's due to the fact that I always knew nothing can hurt me in terms of just if things don't work out, can go back home and I have this strong foundation. So I never really had big self-doubt,
Oh my god,
and I feel like
jealous.
and I feel like that really helped me on set, because remind you, when I started working for the studio, I was 23, and walking on set as a 23-year-old female first assistant, especially in LA, surrounded by like a crew of 40 men, all in their 30s, 40s.
Yeah,
You gotta be confident,
Yeah.
because if you don't show up and you're not confident,
they're gonna eat you alive.
they're gonna eat you.
Yeah,
But I was always very lucky, because all these people that I've got to work with, especially in LA, were so kind and so welcoming, and it never made a difference. And so I always knew I had people in the background that would help me.
Yeah.
Like when I started out, I wasn't like the typical first assistant. I had a lot to learn, right? I came right out of school. And so they always took my hand, and they were like, I'm not in your position, but maybe we should try it this way. Maybe it'll make it easier, And so I was very lucky, I was never really given a hard time with people on set where they were like, okay, she doesn't know that. Like, we're gonna, say something. So yeah, I was, especially there's one guy that I dearly admire. His name is Byron Nickelberry. He's one of the OG assistants in LA. He does everything. And he was just so incredibly kind when I started out and showed me the ropes. And I'll always be grateful for that, because I feel like that's what it is about. No matter who comes on set, and if they're new, just encourage them, because that's how you build confidence, and that's how you turn the whole set around and make it positive, right?
I think that a lot of the through line that I get from like your life and your experience is like the community aspect. If you're able to foster and build your own community, it helps pay dividends down the line. Like with your experience with Mika and her giving you this opportunity in Dubai. Similarly with like me and Kieran and her belief in this podcast and what I'm building here, I think like this idea of being open to developing your own sense of community is tremendous. I think like when I was younger, I probably was like much more closed off and like, hashtag no new friends. And like, I have this mindset like it's me against the world.
Yeah.
And it's like when I'm able to soften as I've gotten older and like realize that like there are things I can help other people out with and it's okay to ask for help from other people, that it's given me this like sense of belief that like the people that I surround myself will hopefully be part of the change of like the things that I want to see with myself. As a female creative who's like starting this solo career, like how do you go about fostering a community for yourself and surrounding yourself with people that are like will hopefully inevitably take you, individually to the next level?
I call people a lot. I just call and check in. I feel like that's something that, really helps building a connection. And it's not just about business calls. It's about like giving them a ring, and be like, hey, how are you? What are you doing? Just generally being interested in the person, right? And I feel like once you do that and once you foster those relationships, opportunities will rise, right? I feel like for me, it's always the person first and then the business, because like the emotional factor of being connected to somebody and the willingness to help them is much greater than just being, oh, so how's your business doing? Like, can we, like create something together? Obviously, but I feel like if you have a personal connection with somebody, it's so much stronger than just, trying to create something out of just as a business aspect.
Yeah, I totally relate to that because like to me, it's like I'm much less interested in like what someone could do for me, financially or business wise, and much more like what can they like aid my life in, like whether it's like a 25-minute catch up of like how are you or whatever. That speaks to me deeply. I think I might be an exception to the rule though, right?
I mean, my mom has always been like the foundation of my family. She's always been the calm rock and the unstable like craziness of creatives. And she always told me, like you got to foster those relationships and they're going to be important. And it's more about what you can give to them than rather than what you would receive. Right. So, I just feel like it's important just in nowadays too with the environment that we're living in and what's happening in the world, just to care about people and just to give. Right.
I know, yeah.
And you'll receive something back. I feel like my dad always believed in this stigma of like, once you give, you'll get it back somehow.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the exact same way, but you'll get it back.
Yeah. I fuck with that a lot. I think like one of the ways you can put yourself on later on in life is just by being very selfless and helpful. Which again, something I learned later in life. But your success is not something that's ever going to be a detriment to me. So it's like, why would I not want to see you be successful? And I think like in the social media world where we live in, it's very easy to foster like a negative or a jealous kind of mindset. And if you are able to shed that and like just be about total growth for everyone and like your success will impact my success later on in life, that could be transformative for someone, because it's hard enough as it is. We don't have to be in competition with each other. Like there is some obvious competition when it comes to these things, but I think at the end of the day, if we're all trying to like, the rising tide lifts all seas, like if we have that kind of mindset, especially as creatives, it can lead to like noticeable change for the better. Yeah. At least I hope.
No, I believe so. And I always said like, you can change a lot as a human being, but together you can change the world. Mm-hmm. So like, as we rise together, we'll change this industry for the better. And with all this stuff that's happening with AI and whatnot, I feel like it's even more important that we work together and try to figure this out as creatives, because we don't want this industry to die, right?
Yeah. I actually think, and I might be just an eternal optimist at this point in my life, I almost think like the AI slop that's coming out is only going to make our work more valuable. And I think that's like one of the reasons why I'm trying to move more into film and stuff. Like there be like a physical, real, fucking felt thing. I used to be worried about it, and I used to be like, oh, well, what am I doing this for? And now I don't feel that way because it's just such shit. And like it has no interest to me. So like
Yeah.
I don't know who's like swiping on their phone and sees like an AI video and think this is the funniest thing. I'm so glad this exists. Like I wish I could filter it out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I agree fundamentally. Like we can all work together to make the change that we want to see in this world. And I just think AI is crap, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm curious. So like as you endeavor on your own, like I've found that the two main pillars of like this, solo entrepreneur career, whatever you want to call it, is like the creative end of things and the business end of things. And I think that's like probably at its core, like the biggest thing that creatives have trouble with, like building a business and also like having like that creative integrity to like be your own artist. How do you navigate that like world of like both being like a business person and like a creative?
How do I navigate? I'm trying to figure that out right now. I've spent a lot of days in front of the computer doing outreach, being on my phone, calling people, and I have to get better just to go out and create. I feel like I'm doing more of like the business side of things at the moment, just because I'm trying to,
Grow.
get jobs and grow. But one thing that's been incredibly hard for me, and I think that's also due to the fact that I worked, at a studio for such a long time, is the simplicity of things. Because you work with such standards, certain things are just become necessary. Like, teching, computer, like lighting, everything becomes so crucial that you forget how simple photography can actually be, right? I had, when I first came to New York, I had so much fun just grabbing my camera, going out in the streets, and I took incredible pictures. Now it's so hard for me to just go out and take a simple picture.
Really?
It gotten so complicated. It's just due to the fact that I have so much knowledge,
Yeah.
and I think I know how to do things right, but I'm trying to just strip back a little bit and forget about the craziness of it all and just have fun. And I think that's what ultimately will make me successful, is trying to find a balance between obviously the business and the perfectionism of that parts, but also just having fun with it. And sometimes stripping things back and just do you.
Yeah, fucking love that. For a new thing I want to try like in this new year, in this new like season of my podcast, what's like one piece of advice that like 30-year-old Romy would give to like 10-year-old Romy?
30-year-old Romy to 10-year-old Romy. I would say just be kind to yourself. Everything will work out. You're gonna pivot in a lot of different directions, but at the end of the day, you're gonna land exactly where you need to be. And just trust yourself. Spend time with the people that you love. Don't be so hard on yourself. Have compassion, and just have a laugh.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not always that serious.
Yeah, even though it feels that way.
Exactly, but like I feel like that's the secret to life. Just relax.
Yeah.
I know you gotta make a living. I know it's tough. You live in New York City. You have certain expectations, but if you take a little step back and look at it from a different perspective, it might help you.
I totally agree. I think fundamentally, like what you're describing in its core is like being open to the universe or whatever to supply. Like if you have a belief in yourself and your skills and your talent and your mindset is like, I'm going to find what's meant for me and I'm going to be successful, and you just keep telling yourself that, I truly believe like that will happen. I think if you're open to the abilities of the world to supply you with like the great gifts that it has, you can have that. And I think like, in a lot of ways we wouldn't be having this conversation if I didn't have that mindset. It's like we wouldn't be here today. I think that's kind of one of the beauties in life. Romy, I have a very cheesy line. If you've been on my podcast, you're part of my family. So thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a real pleasure, and I really look forward to seeing what you do with your career. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.